Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Anupama, Professor at Department of Economics, Punjabi University, Patiala. I am going to talk about the module Urban Housing Systems, including home ownership, private renting and public renting from population, urbanization and poverty. So students, we are going to discuss about the affordability of housing facilities and the case of different types of tenure arrangements. Well, housing is a basic necessity. Its accessibility and affordability is crucial to a country and its people. Without it, people are impoverished, families and communities eroded, jobs lost, the economy weakened, and the environment is damaged. Urbanization has resulted in people increasingly living in slums and squatter settlements and has deteriorated the housing conditions of economically weaker sections of the society. This is primarily due to the skyrocketing prices of land and real estate in urban areas that have forced the poor and the economically weaker sections of the society to occupy the marginal lands typified by poor housing stock, congestion, and obsolescence. In most of the developing countries, real estate is a flourishing business. But the private developers primarily target luxury, high-end, and upper mid-housing segment. Since it fetches a premium over low-income housing. This leads to a sustainable supply for this segment, increasing market competitiveness for the developers. On the other hand, the housing for the poor and economically weaker sections is primarily provided by the government for welfare purposes. However, it is insufficient as compared to existing shortage in this segment. So in this light, this module aims to throw light on affordable housing, the problems in affordability of houses, housing and tenure arrangements, distribution of houses according to tenure arrangements, projections for housing demand, the housing tax structure, the contribution of private sector and government sector in construction of the affordable housing. Thus, it is the housing requirements of the lower middle income and lower income groups that are grossly neglected, and there exists a huge dearth in the supply of affordable houses, primarily demanded by this income group. The affordability of housing facilities greatly influence the demand for households of different tenure, that is, how demand is split between owner-occupier, private rented and social rented households. When housing prices are too high relative to the income levels of the individuals, the demand for private renting is higher and rents are also very high. The need of government housing would further increase. Thus, the affordability is as important as the availability of houses. Therefore, here it is important to understand the concept of affordability. Affordable housing. Affordability of housing can be defined in a number of ways, namely income level, size of dwelling unit, and its cost. As per US Department of Housing and Urban Development, the generally accepted definition of housing affordability is for a household to pay no more than 30% of its annual income on housing. Families who pay more than 30% of their income for housing are considered cost burdened and may have difficulty affording necessities such as food, clothing, transportation, and medical care. Another comprehensive definition is given by Jones Lang LaSalle, which is a professional services and investment management company specializing in real estate. According to this definition, the affordability of a household not only encompasses the cost of housing, and income of the persons willing to buy, but also upon the availability of basic amenities, the cost of maintenance, as well as the location of the house. While most definitions look at the affordability in terms of area and cost, the provision of basic amenities such as sanitation, adequate water supply, and power to the dwelling unit is also crucial. Also, provision of community spaces and amenities such as parks, schools, and healthcare facilities, either within the project or in the neighborhood, are desirable depending upon the size and location of the housing project. Besides, an affordable housing project should be located within reasonable distances from workplaces and should be connected adequately through public transport. If housing is developed very far away from major workplace hub in a city or entails expensive transport costs to the city, whilst price of the residential unit might be low due to lower land cost, the housing plus transportation cost would be higher and the affordability is greatly affected. Thus, we have observed that a number of other related factors affect the affordability of housing in urban areas. But there is no doubt that the cost of housing in shape of rental or monthly payments, along with the level of income, has most important role to play. The relationship between income and affordability for various income groups follows a non-linear trend. The cost on food, non-food essentials, and house rent form a significant proportion of income for lower income groups. As we move towards higher income levels, the rise in cost do not increase at the same pace. Disposable surplus income, which is often used to purchase a new house, drops significantly at lower income levels and is higher at higher income levels. This can be observed from figure 1. The figure shows that the people of higher income levels can better afford to purchase new houses owing to higher disposable surplus incomes. In a report by Jones Lang LaSalle on Indian housing also emphasized that disposable surplus is highly sensitive to incremental change of expenditure. This report points out that if house rents increase from 15% to 20%, the disposable surplus for a low income household, that is the persons with monthly income of rupees 10,000, reduces to 30% from 35%, whereas for persons with monthly income around rupees 1,20,000, an increase in rent from 15% to 20% leads to a reduction in surplus income from 64% to 59%. The problems in affordability of houses. There can be several issues hindering the affordability of housing facilities. Whereas on the supply side, the availability of land, regulatory framework, cost of construction, etc. are the supply side constraints, average level of income and housing finance facilities rule the demand side. So first of all, we will discuss about the availability of land. Rapid urbanization of population, the gap between demand and supply of land increases. The real shortage is further exacerbated due to state and municipal regulations. Such supply-side constraints raise the cost of housing artificially. By excessively controlling the volume of construction in centrally located areas, urban development is pushed towards the periphery. This results in longer commuting trips, with public transport becoming difficult to operate and unnecessary extension of urban infrastructure. The second problem is that of legal hurdles. For housing market to develop at full potential, strong protection to property rights is essential, which needs a supportive legal system. Non-transparent laws and bureaucratic hurdles often lead to inefficient market with significant disadvantages to buyers. The procedural delays in registration and transfer of ownership, mapping of land, and other related sanctions often add to already high unit prices of land. This severely affects the affordability of houses, particularly in low and middle income scenarios of the society. The third issue is related with cost of construction. Though the cost of land is very important, yet the construction cost also has a significant share in the price of affordable housing. Hence, it becomes important that costs are minimized for construction of low-income housing, taking due care of the strength, safety, and quality of the structure along with the provision of basic amenities. Minimizing the cost of construction has assumed even more importance in today's world as the cost of construction has significantly increased all around the world due to appreciation in prices of construction materials such as steel, cement, as well as cost of labor. The fourth problem is related with access to finance. Despite having an extensive network of financial institutions, banks and apex housing cooperative societies, low-income groups lack access to home finance due to inadequate collateral. In most of the developing countries, a major proportion of the housing loan is provided to the middle income and high income groups. These financial institutions prefer the persons with regular jobs and ask for pay slips and income tax returns as a proof of their repaying capacity. Since a big majority of the workers in the urban areas are employed in the informal sector and therefore are unable to produce such documents, which further deprives them of any finance for construction or purchase of a house. Housing and tenure arrangements. All of these problems indicate that low-income households typically cannot get finance for purchase of home due to lack of credit history. On the other hand, rental housing suits their variable income profile. The rental system also suits the governments as the subsidy outlays for rental housing are lower than subsidizing house ownership and the housing assets remain with governments so that it can be used multiple times. Remarkably, few governments have taken rental housing very seriously over the last 30 years. Little information is available about the tenants and about the sharers. The governments of the developing countries rarely admit in their policy document that any rental market even exists. But if we look at the rental markets in developed countries, we can easily get an idea what would be the scenario in developing economies in the coming time period who are trying hard to catch up the former. The distribution of houses by tenure arrangement in few selected developed countries is shown in Table 1. The table shows that more than 30% of the housing is rental housing, while on the other hand, the rental housing in India has very low penetration as compared to the developing countries. Table 1 further elaborates that out of the social housing stock, the relative share of the pure public sector and that of the profit and non-profit organizations are country specific. For example, in Ireland and Australia, about 90% land and 80% is contributed by pure public sector alone, while in European region, that is France, Netherlands and Denmark, nearly whole of the social housing is provided by the profit and non-profit housing associations. We can also have an idea about distribution of house ownership in India from figure 2. The share of house ownership in India has increased from 66.8% in 2001 to 69.2% in 2011, while that of the share of rented households has declined from 28.5% to 27.5% during the same period. Actually, the global trend towards increasing urbanization also pushes markets towards rental housing. In any country, the percentage of people who do not own a home is significantly higher in central cities because land and housing prices are higher there. The distribution of houses according to ownership in a few selected cities is shown in Table 2. The table shows that home ownership rates are as low as 14% in Geneva and 12% in Berlin. Situations are diverse elsewhere, but most of the time home ownership rates vary considerably between central districts and areas that lie farther from the center, whether technically part of a city or in the suburbs. For example, the overall home ownership rate is 34% in New York City, but 25% in the borough of Manhattan, 45% in Queens, and 69% in Staten. In Paris, the ownership rate in the urban area is 47%. It is 33% in the city, 43% in the close suburbs, that is the first ring, and 60% in the second ring. Now we can look at some projections for housing demand. Actually, the demand for housing and tenure type largely depends upon the prevailing economic conditions. That is, the income level, the cost of tenure arrangements, and the supply of each type of housing. The Institute for Public Policy Research has tried to estimate the housing demand under prospective good, bad, and ugly economic conditions up to 2025. Projecting the overall demand for housing provides important information for policymakers. However, to get a better understanding of the potential policy implications of changes in housing demand, we need to understand how overall demand might translate into demand for different tenure types. For this purpose, different economic scenarios have been imagined. In each of these scenarios, unemployment rates, housing affordability, and net migration rates are quite different. These scenarios can be discussed as follows. Number one, the good economic conditions. This means an improving economy. It is being projected that by 2020, unemployment recovers to its 2004 level. That is the low point for unemployment rates over the last decade, achieving close to full employment. This economic scenario implies both a strong economy and rising incomes, which are linked to rising housing prices. As a result, unaffordability remains a problem and is assumed to be constant at 2010 levels. The strong economy means migration also remains high, therefore increasing the demand for housing further. The bad economic conditions. This means an economy which is neither growing nor showing any signs of growth. Unemployment remains high due to dwindling income levels. The demand for housing is lower. Under such conditions, affordability improves as house prices fall as a result of constrained income. In crisis-ridden economies, it is expected that if such bad conditions prevail, income levels would also be very low. Therefore, the affordability levels of 2001 can be reached only after 2020. The ugly economic conditions. This refers to a deteriorating economy and housing market crash. With a 20% reduction in housing prices in 2012 and the falling income with very high and consistently rising unemployment rates, again a return to 2001 affordability levels by 2020 is assumed as the market corrects itself. Migration levels are also weak due to weak economic conditions. Considering these conditions, the housing demand for England has been estimated for the period 2009 to 2025. It is shown in figure 3. Under normal circumstances, ownership of houses is always a preferred type of tenure. The figure shows that under good economic conditions, the largest increase in demand can be seen in case of ownership of houses, while it slashes down under ugly economic scenario. On the other hand, in bad and ugly economic scenarios, the demand for social renting assumes greater importance. Private renting seems to be less preferred in both the good and bad scenarios, as we can see a decline in demand for this type of housing tenure. It is only under the ugly economic scenario that its demand is likely to increase. This points towards the role of government intervention under the conditions of crisis. The figure has thrown light on important issue of housing market, that in each economic scenario, the segment of the private rented houses is not showing any promising signs. Actually, while investing in a property, the investors weigh the cost and returns on the property with other investment alternatives, which largely depend upon the prevailing rates of return and the rate of taxation. In most economies, real estate in general and rental housing in particular is often heavily taxed. Owner-occupied main residences often receive benefits and tax subsidies which are superior to those of rental housing. This is one way in which governments encouraging home ownership. Few countries are perfectly tenure neutral. The best example is Switzerland. In Switzerland, imputed rents, the estimated rental value of the unit, are treated like rental income. In other countries, whether the tax burden is too heavy or is perceived as such, investors try to find alternative ways of earning returns on their capital. Individuals or small owners might not have the option of funding alternatives. Instead, they can find ways to keep their properties out of the formal rental sector. Moreover, in many emerging countries, the choices offered to the institutional investors are quite limited. They are even more limited for the individuals. Studies performed in Mexico noted that the rate of income tax evasion on rental units owned by individuals averaged 70 to 75% during 1998 to 2004. The fiscal cost to the government was estimated at 0.25% of gross domestic product. The case of Mexico is very interesting to understand why investors do not deploy their capital toward rental housing and why individuals and small owners try to evade the tax system. In Mexico, in 2010, for the individual owners, the rate of return of the 10-year government bond was 7.5%. These bonds are tax-free for these individuals. The gross rate of return on rental was estimated to be 7% in Mexico City and 10% elsewhere. Assuming that current expenses reduce this return by 25% and that tax rate is 22.5% of gross income or 30% of net income, the after-tax rate of return is 3.67% in Mexico City and 5.25% elsewhere. Thus, the rate of return from rental housing is lower than the return on government bonds. When the risks of rentals are factored in, this rate can actually be negative. Table 3 provides an international comparison of taxation on rental housing. The table shows that the ownerships as well as the rentals are subject to taxation in these countries. Therefore, if the risks are higher, people would have lesser tendency to investing in rental house. Even the governments across the world have been anxious to encourage home ownership, and these biases are always reflected in the taxation policies regarding home ownership. Over the last 20 or 30 years, owner occupation has generally increased in most urban areas. This is a fairly consistent tendency across countries, whatever their level of development. Nonetheless, there are significant regional differences, and a few countries have bucked the trend, sometimes temporarily, occasionally for longer. Whether the proportion of owner occupiers has increased or not, a common feature of housing in most developing countries is that the number of urban families living in rental or shared housing has usually increased. The sheer volume of urban growth through both migration and natural increase has encouraged that tendency because the vast majority of migrants and new urban households initially rent or share accommodation. In Delhi, for example, the number of tenant households increased from 25.6% in 2001 to 28.2% in 2011. In many countries, even in cities where the proportion of non-owners has been in rapid decline, the pace of urban expansion has often led to a considerable increase in the absolute numbers of non-owners. On the other hand, in developing countries, the construction of public housing tended to be less influential because the amount of public rental housing relative to the total housing stock was much more limited. After the 70s, indeed, the few governments in developing countries ever built for rent, and that which had been quickly sold to the tenants. Insofar as most governments in poorer countries had explicit housing policies, they sought to encourage home ownership. Under such a policy, most governments not only provide lending facilities but also offer tax incentives to the middle classes buying homes. The public sector's involvement in renting of the houses is meant for the government employees only. In Delhi alone, according to an estimate, public rental housing accommodated 6% of all households in the city and 13% of all tenant households. In different countries, we can find the different proportions of public sector renting of houses to professionals and the economically weaker sections. In most of the developing countries, actually, the government is expected to assist in owning the house rather than in renting systems. All the studies on affordability have actually shown that ideally the government assistance should come in shape of subsidies in owning a house. For example, a study by McKinsey Global Institute on affordability of housing in India has shown that out of the total demand for 37.9 million affordable housing stock, the government is expected to construct 23.4 million, that is 61.74%, and out of which only 7 million are meant for rental purposes. This distribution of affordable housing is shown in figure 4. The figure also shows the tendency of the private sector towards lesser investment in the houses meant for rentals as compared to the ownership. Out of 14.5 million affordable houses to be built by the private sector, only 4.4 million are meant for rentals and a bigger proportion, that is 10.1 million, is meant for ownership purposes. This shows that still the governments as well as the private sector has been focusing upon the houses to be built for the persons who are willing to own them. So students, let us sum up what we have learned from this module. To sum up, it can be stated that housing is the basic necessity of the human beings, which greatly influences a person's or a household's productive capacity. Depending upon the levels of income, availability of houses, the rentals, the cost of production, and related regulations, people may opt for ownership or the rental arrangements for their housing needs. All around the world, the The processes of urbanization have been pushing people towards cities at an unprecedented pace, resulting in an increase in housing demand in urban areas. Although the demand for rental houses has been increasing in big cities, but the people have the tendency to ultimately own a house. The governments of developing countries are also having policies towards subsidizing the purchase of house and least bother about the rental markets directly and indirectly. But it is also being realized that the renting arrangements can now be an easy and affordable option for the governments as well as the urban poor. Therefore, the governments should directly be involved in construction of the houses for purpose of renting it out to the migrants in urban areas, and also should be providing more subsidies on the rents so that people may find the option of rental housing equally preferable until they are able to purchase their own house. That's all with today's lecture. I hope you must have enjoyed it. Thank you.